Alright, in this video we're going to talk about contrast as the fourth principle of design. And this is really where design starts to take off. And you notice that I've done things in a three-step, four-step process, starting with proximity alignment, then some repetition. I'll come back to repetition a bit more in a bit. But you can see that as we applied proximity and alignment type elements, we did it consistently. So we add clarity, add interest, add organization, and we also add consistency. And to some degree, it unifies everything. So if we do things consistently, all of these things tend to be related. They're not in their own element. This all goes together. And by doing things in a repetitive fashion, along with proximity, all of these things belong together. Alright, so next we're going to do contrast. I'm going to copy this and paste it. By now you're starting to get familiar with how Illustrator works as well for just basic editing. And with contrast, we're really going to add several things here, and this is where the designer really can apply personality. But it too adds clarity. We can use contrast to make things look better. It's going to make things more interesting. Otherwise we could have just done this all in Microsoft Word. It also helps with organization. And then we're going to add some other things. I would say with contrast, we add a lot of emotion, we can add a lot of energy, and we can add focus, and we can add a lot of personality. So this is a lot that we can do a lot of things with contrast to make things better. And coming back up here to proximity, since I'm talking about unify and repetition, I wanted to add relationship and hierarchy to the proximity tool, because with proximity these things all belong together. So there's a relationship in addition to the organization. Another thing about alignment that comes into lines, you'll hear this term called eye lines. And you can draw the eye of the reader across the page using alignment as a design principle. So right now, the fact that we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, this goes in a Z pattern, we've got the reader going in a certain order. It's not likely that the reader is going to start at the bottom right and work their way up. They'll go from the top, they'll come down, go right, left, and right. Okay, so let's do some things with contrast to make things interesting. The first thing that we can do with is change size. So a lot of times, I mean, like right now, this isn't bad. I mean, if you sent this to somebody, they'd get it, right? But now we got a chance to make things a little bit more interesting. So I'm going to change the font size. If I have this selected, I should be able to change the font size right up here. And I'll just choose 48. I could maybe even go a little bigger than that. Go to 60. And notice that if I make it significantly bigger, it's more interesting than if I didn't. Same with this sub design. I'll go a little bit bigger. And generally, this title, whatever the title of your document is, that's usually going to be the largest font. So we're working with size here. So I'm going to choose this one. Let's also make that a little bit bigger. And I'll just go with this 24. And we got contrast. So size is one way we can affect contrast. The other thing that we can do is change fonts. So we've been using the same font for all of this. So let's go ahead and change this one. I'm going to go to Arial Black. Probably everyone has Arial Black. maybe not, but you could find something that works close enough. Let's see, Arial Black. And there's other ways. There are ways to repeat this. Um, in a different format. If I think I can also, one thing I can do is I can click on these and I can actually make them narrower, or maybe I just find a better font size. So maybe I can't go quite that big. So we'll go down to 21 instead. And that way I keep everything inside those boxes. Or maybe I didn't even need the 1, 2, 3, right? All of these things are things that you can play around with. The 1, 2, 3, 4, I think if I have things in this order, that'd be fine too. So maybe, well, we'll keep the 21 font size. So that's contrast. So we've had size, and notice there's a difference between bolding and not bolding. So that's another form of contrast. One other thing that we could do is we can start introducing color. So with this, I'm going to select this first box, and I'm going to change the color. I'm going to bring up my little swatches window. If you didn't see this, you can go to Window and choose Swatches, and then you'll see this little window pop up. And I'll just choose one of these blues. I'm not too fond of that blue. Let's see here. Which one do I like? We'll go with this one. That one's good too, but this one's fine. So there's a blue, and I can also change the thickness. If I choose this stroke thing, there's a stroke window as well. And in the stroke window, I can change that to a 10-point font, 10-point stroke. In fact, I'll do that on all of these to be consistent. So repetition would say do all of those stroke widths the same, right? It would throw people off and be distracting if one was thinner and you were all over the place without any rhyme or reason. See how this is just a little discombobulated right now? Maybe you'd have a good reason for doing it, but if you don't do it tactfully, it can actually look like a mess. So it's more distracting than it is helpful. So to keep everything tidy, I'm just going to use principle of repetition and keep those all the same size. Now my box, I'm going to have to select this box, and if I right click, I can arrange send to back. So that way it's behind everything. However, I've run into an issue here now where this dark font doesn't really go, makes it hard for this to read. So I'm going to choose this text and come up to my swatches and choose white. And I have to make sure I do the fill color. I don't want to stroke around my text. And around my proximity, I'll just do the same thing, and we'll go with white. Now in this box, we may want to change a fill color, and let's go with something kind of orange. So we'll go with an orange. Again, arrange send to back. Now here I've added some what I would call color contrast. So blue and orange, complementary colors. You'll someday get color theory. This box down here, let's go with a burgundy. And again, I gotta send that one to back. And I'll change the font color to white. Now at some point, can it actually get too repetitive? It can. So I'm going to do something a little different here. I'm going to change this stroke color this black to that same blue as the fill color. And I'm going to do the same thing with orange. Change the black to the same matching orange. I'm going to change this black to the same matching red. Now with the contrast here, I'm going to go back to this blue. And instead of making this white, I'll use the same blue. And we'll use the blue for the text as well. I gotta make sure I do the fill color. So there's a difference in Illustrator between the fill color and a stroke color. If you put stroke around a text, it'll make it look a little bit too thick. Now, if I think this text is a little small, I can increase the size. So we bump that up to 15. Just makes it a little bit bigger, a little easier to read. There we go. Contrast. I messed that up. I gotta turn this stroke. The stroke should be transparent, no fill color, and that's this little what looks like a diver down flag. So what I did here is you can see repetition. These were all done the same, but I've changed things up with contrast by having different colors, and then in this case I didn't even have a fill color, and I changed the outline of the stroke just to make it a little bit more interesting. Maybe we don't even like this being black, because right now this is the only thing that's black. So that being the only thing black is a little distracting for me. So I'm going to change that to also more of a matching blue. So you're starting to see that this has a little bit of a personality. If I wanted to get even a little fancier, I can draw with my rectangle tool. Up in the corner, I'm going to start and I'm going to draw a box. And I'll make it about this big. And then with the white, this is a little advanced, I'm getting a little fancy here. With the white direct select tool, I can click right on this edge of this path, and you'll see a tiny little white anchor arrow that I can actually click and drag up. So I'm going to do, I won't go that far. Let's go about right there. I'm going to arrange, send to back. So now maybe this color doesn't work too well because I don't have any contrast. Not only that, but my text that was blue, let's go ahead and make that white again. I know I'm making you go all over the place right now, but that's sort of the idea of design, is that you're going to make adjustments all the time. So it's an iterative process till you find something that you like. So maybe if I don't want this to be the blue, then I could actually make that be the red. I could make the red be the orange. Actually, I don't know if I like that either. We'll keep the orange there. Let's make this blue again. And I gotta change the fill color as well. Back to blue. Again, is there a right or wrong way to do this? Not necessarily. It's all preference. And then I can take this, make a copy of it, and paste it. And then if I get my corner really close here, well, actually, let's do an edit. Let's see, object, transform. We're going to reflect, and we're going to do it vertically. And then I can rotate it. Actually, that didn't get me where I wanted either. have to object, transform, reflect. This time I'll go horizontal. And I still didn't do what I wanted it to do. Let's do object, transform, reflect. Let's go vertical. Oh boy, I'm just kind of messing this up. So I'm going to go ahead and let's bring this down to the bottom. Not sure, I got my reflection settings mixed up a little bit there, so bear with me. So now I'm going to click these little anchor points again and just bring them down. You'll notice that it doesn't quite go to the corner, so I'll just make sure that that's right in the corner. And this will have to be stretched out just a little bit. And I'm just kind of playing around with things right now. You don't have to do any of these. These are all just a preference thing entirely. Arrange, send to back. You'll notice this now needs a fill color, so I'll make that white. Alright, so we've been playing around here a little bit with the principles of design. And you can play around with a lot of these things. Like you can even stretch how big or how small text is. If you don't like, if you wanted to move everything down to get some more size, and with the do, arrange, send it back. All of these can be made bigger. So if I made this one a taller font, like so, I can use this magic wand tool, or the eyedropper tool, and I can make it just like the one below, and then just realign things. So you see that I'm playing around with things right now, and it's just a little bit of tweaking until I get things about where I like them. And you can play around with these as much as you want. Nothing is right or necessarily wrong, but you can see the reason why I'm making these changes. Now, another thing that I introduced here with this background is I added some diagonal. Everything here in the design was straight up and down, and to add some more contrast, I added a diagonal element to add a lot of energy. So when things are up and down, they feel strong. When things are horizontal, they feel smooth. When we add a diagonal, things add energy, some speed. So it added a whole lot of pizzazz just by doing that. And this is a pretty good design. You know, there's probably 1,000 different ways you could have laid this out and applied proximity, alignment, and contrast. But I hope this was a good example of how you've got things that you can work with to work with proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast. Anything and everything that you do in design should be decided. There shouldn't be anything on your design that's left unknown or I don't know why I did that. That's what we want to get you out of the habit of. Don't let the computer or the software do too much of the work for you. We want you to critically think about proximity, alignment, repetition, and contrast. And we'll always be thinking and talking in those terms throughout this course. So this is really, really key on not only how do we use the software, which you'll get an introduction to in this course, but really starting to develop your thinking, critical thinking skills as you try to do your own designs, and also as you look at other people's designs. What do you like about other people's designs when you see them? Can you break it down into the principles of proximity, alignment, and repetition and contrast? Now, these are the 4 proximity alignment according to a book called the Non-Designer's Design Book. by Robin Williams, and we just kind of made our own little mini version, and you can keep this. Now there's one more thing I'm going to add just as my professor. This is a pretty good design. This isn't bad, but there's one little step that we can add to change things up if you'd like to. So we'll cover that in the next video when we add just that little thing that's unexpected to put our design into the cool factor, because a lot of us get in design because we like to be cool. Design is we don't want to be cool at the cost of confusing people though, but could there be something we add to this that maybe was unexpected? Maybe these diagonal lines were already doing that. Certainly if it was just flat without it, that could have worked, but it would have been a little less interesting. So we've already done a little bit of something unique and unexpected. Let's see if we can do something more in the next video.